Hey guys, this is Sarah from Recovered Health. I'm having some serious technical difficulties with my computer, so once again, the iPhone saves me. It is the simple process. And I know this is going to be a little bit hard to see, so blow it up, but I'm going to try and move out of the way, but it's a little bit hard with the phone screen. Today, I'm here to talk to you about 3 steps to create the body you want. And we are stuck, most of us, particularly those of us over 40. And I know exactly how that feels because I was stuck. And it didn't matter how much I exercised, how great I ate, how much nutrition knowledge I have. I've been studying nutrition for 30 years. I couldn't lose weight. And the older I got, the harder it got. And I blamed it on my age. I blamed it on having kids late. I blamed it on my autoimmune disease. You know, hormones, genetics. I was like, I just can't get thin. But none of that is true. And I'm going to tell you what actually is happening and how to undo it, because it can absolutely be undone. So what's happening? The reality is that unknowingly, we have conditioned our bodies to store fat instead of to burn it. We are meant to burn fat, our own body fat, for fuel. But because we have, over the past 60 years, started eating so much processed food, so much sugar, so much carbohydrate, we're eating non-stop. So we've conditioned our body to always have sugar available and to never have to burn our body fat for fuel. And it makes us stuck. That's one of the biggest reasons. So I'm going to tell you the solution. I'm just going to jump right to it. And the solution is 3 parts, which I use on all my clients. Fuel our metabolism, optimize our hormones, and manage our mindset. I'm going to tell you about each one of these. The first one is the most important, in my opinion. Well, actually, it's hard to choose. It's hard to choose between your 2 favorite things. The first one is fueling our metabolism. You've probably heard people say, oh, as you get older, your metabolism slows down. Well, that's true, but it doesn't have to. It slows down because we lose muscle, and we don't have to lose muscle. Muscle is what I like to call like the organ of longevity. That's Dr. Gabrielle Leon's phrase, actually. And if we don't have enough of it, our metabolic rate slows down. And there's only 3 ways to protect, preserve, and promote our muscle. One of them is growth hormone. And you guys have probably seen the 17-year-old kid, right? Who's like eating Twinkies and potato chips, and somehow he gets to be 6 feet tall and 170 pounds. That has nothing to do with what he's eating. It is just simply growth hormone. And in our 30s, we stop making it. And that's part of the reason that our muscle declines. There's only 2 other ways left to make muscle. And I'm going to tell you what they are. But first, I want to tell you why muscle is so important. Besides the fact that it dictates your metabolism, it's responsible for 80% of your metabolism, how many calories you can burn. You guys, again, you have either brothers or fathers or husbands or friends that are men that decide to lose weight, and they lose weight so easily. And then every weekend they still have a pizza and they still lose weight. And it seems so unfair. It's just because they have more muscle than we do. And so we can play that game too. And I'm going to just tell you how. So how do we promote muscle? Protein. Protein, protein, protein. It is the fountain of youth. It is the key to everything. The second way that we can build muscle and save our muscle and preserve our muscles is to eat protein. But it's not just any old protein. That's part of the problem. It has to be a high quality protein in a certain quantity. And proteins are built of amino acids. And if you think about that like a pearl necklace, all the pearls are amino acids. And then the big, gorgeous medallion at the center, that is the most important amino acid. And if you don't have that in the right quantity, you can't affect your muscle. And the foods that are the highest in that amino acid are animal foods. Milk, meat, eggs, chicken, fish, animal products. And that's what we evolved eating over 2 million years, was animal foods. That's what our body is made of, is protein. So the important thing about this isn't just that you eat protein, and it isn't just that it's high quality, but it has to be enough, and it has to be often enough. And so a lot of people will say, well, I'm going to have an egg for breakfast. It's not going to do it. As we get older, that amino acid that makes the big medallion, we become resistant to it. So we actually have to eat more and more protein the older and older we get. And that's actually counterintuitive, because we think we eat less as we get older, but we need to eat less of the other stuff in order to make room for the protein. So the amount that it takes, let me just give you a few examples. If you were to try and eat a plant-based meal to try and stimulate protein growth, muscle growth, 6 cups of quinoa, 15 slices of bread, 2 cups of nuts, 3 cups of beans. That is a hell of a lot of food and a hell of a lot of calories. So it's possible, but the chances that you're going to be able to lose weight with that amount of food, and you're going to have all sorts of GI distress, not to mention that those starchier plant-based foods just don't have as many nutrients. So you're going to be eating a ton of food and you're not even going to be getting a ton of nutrition. The other part is timing. We are able to trigger that muscle growing response only every 3 to 4 hours. So some people don't eat all day and then they eat one big meal. That's not going to do it. When you are getting, particularly if you're a woman, particularly in your 40s and 50s and beyond, you want to be eating at least twice a day, at least 3 times a day, to trigger that muscle growth. Because the more muscle you have, the faster your metabolic rate and the more calories you can burn. The other really, really, really cool part of protein that I think makes it kind of magic is that it's really expensive to burn it. You've heard that story. This is like from, I think, the 80s or earlier, that celery has negative calories because of all the chewing. Well, food really does cost energy to burn. It does use calories to burn and digest and absorb. And protein is the most expensive of all foods to digest. So if you eat 1,000 calories of protein, which I actually do, almost, I eat a ton of protein. Only 700 of those calories are absorbed. 700. So you just cut 300 calories without doing anything. That was the equivalent of a 3-mile run doing absolutely nothing. So that is a huge, huge benefit of a rich protein diet. The other really cool thing about protein is that there's something called the protein leverage hypothesis. And it states that we will continue to be hungry until our protein needs are met. We cannot make protein in our body. We can make carbohydrate. You never need to eat carbohydrate. You can make it. You don't need to eat fat. Well, for hormones you do, and we'll talk about that later. But you can also make fat, right? I mean, any excess calories you get can get stored as fat. But protein is required in the diet. And if you don't get it, your body will eat and eat and eat and eat until its protein needs are met. And the RDA, which established how many nutrients we need many, many decades ago, is not optimal. It's being revised. But that was the amount of protein and calories and vitamins and minerals we needed to just not die and get disease. What I talk about is what you need to thrive, to feel amazing, to be the most fit, lean person you can be as you age. and however old you get. So let's talk more about part 2. So protein is one of the key factors. The other thing, the next part is kind of tied, is optimizing your hormones. This is a really big deal because our hormones, not just testosterone and estrogen and progesterone, but we have a lot of other hormones, and they dictate whether we store fat or whether we burn it. They literally tell our body what to do. And if we don't have our hormones optimized, we will just store, and not burn, no matter what you do. And that's the position that a lot of us have been in. The other thing hormones do that's really important is they dictate whether you're hungry or you're full. So you can have your hormones out of whack and be eating enough food and still be hungry. So it's so hard to get anywhere with your hormones working against you, but it's completely solvable. So the kind of big kahuna of hormones is insulin. And insulin is like the gatekeeper. When you eat carbohydrate, whether it's sugar, bread, brown rice, cookies, fruit, juice, smoothies, it gets turned into glucose, and insulin tells it where to go. And I like to describe insulin as like the ball catcher at a tennis match. And it's like over by the sidelines, ready to grab the ball and put it where it needs to go. Well, our storage centers for that glucose are limited. So once you max those out, glucose is like, insulin's like, great, I'm gonna take all this glucose and store it as fat. Boom, boom, boom. And what happens in today's world with food everywhere, available all the time, 24/7, you can get whatever the hell you want. I know people that eat at 2 o'clock in the morning and then get up at 6 and put a bunch of sugar in their coffee. They never stop putting carbohydrate in their body. It's very common. So insulin's out there on the tennis match, ready to grab the ball, and like there's like 1,000,000 balls flying everywhere. So it calls in all its friends, all the other ball catchers. Now there's a ton of them, and there's insulin everywhere. And when insulin is high, when it's out in full force, there is no way you're gonna burn fat. Boom, that's the situation that we're in right now. So my main priority is to get your insulin levels down. And the very best way to do that is to eliminate carbohydrates and sugar. And you've probably heard of this as a ketogenic diet or ketosis. And it's the very best way to start. Not everybody in my program is 6 months stays that way, because eventually they start reintroducing carbs, and there's timing as to when they suit your body best. But when we start out that way and we drop the carbohydrates down, there's no balls for the catcher to catch, right? There's no balls coming in. There's vegetables, but that's hardly anything. And so the insulin goes and sits down. It's like, I don't have a job anymore. And it drops lower and lower and lower and lower. And the interesting thing I need to point out about insulin is a lot of people in our country have high insulin and they don't know it because no one tests for it. The majority of lab values that will predict health consequences in the future, they don't test for those. They test just for blood sugars and cholesterol and your basics that don't really give you a lot of information. But your insulin levels can be high for a decade before any kind of elevated blood sugar will show up. So a lot of us are insulin resistant, meaning we have too much insulin in our blood. And one of the ways you know that is that you can't lose weight. It's super hard. You have more fat on your belly. Your triglycerides are high and your HDL is low. That's another predictor. I just want to mention that because I think it's really, really important. So when you get insulin down, what happens is that all of a sudden the gates are open and your body's like, Burn the fat, burn the fat, burn the fat. Now, most people have insulin, like I mentioned, that's too high. We want it to be under 10 to even start burning fat. And the lab value in our country, the high end of the lab value is 25, and it's almost laughable. I like to see insulin under 6. Mine's 2.2. So it's very hard for me to get fat. It's very hard for me to gain weight. I eat a lot more than most people my size because of the way that I eat. So the other thing that I want to point out that's really important is that process that we get, that I help people get their bodies into by eating low carb, of ketosis. There's a lot of advantages to that. Our fat becomes more metabolically active, meaning it burns more calories. We have more satiety, meaning we're full longer. So you can eat a lot less and feel a lot more full. You have less brain fog, you have more energy, more clarity, you sleep better. It's also really great for preventing disease. So you're just a lot healthier and more vital in general. There's another way to get insulin down in addition to dropping carbs, and that is just eating less, often, mostly. So if you go back to the tennis match analogy and the ball catcher's out there, if you're eating at 6 o'clock in the morning and then a 10 o'clock snack and then noon and then an afternoon snack, and then before you get home, you're like a little hungry, so you have some chips, and then you have dinner, and then you have a late night snack, tennis balls coming in all day long. It's going to drive insulin up because it has to be there to catch them. But if you shorten your eating window, you've probably heard of intermittent fasting or restricted eating. I personally don't eat before 9 a.m. and I usually don't eat anything after 5:30 or 6 p.m. So I only eat for about 8 hours a day, and the rest of the time, my insulin is low. Even if I were to be eating carbohydrates and sugar, which I don't usually, my insulin is low for 16 hours. That's another thing that people can do. That alone will help your health and your weight. But here's the problem. I have a lot of clients who have tried to limit their eating window, who've tried to intermittent fast. But because their body's been conditioned to run off sugar and their insulin's so high, they can't access their body fat for energy and fuel, they're stuck, right? So they'll fast and they'll be like really gripping their teeth, trying not to eat. And their body is meant to use its own fat stores for fuel. It's like, normally for me, no problem. I can go 24 hours. I've been 5 days without eating. There's actually a case recorded of someone fasting for an entire year. They were so obese, they just drank water and took supplements for a year. They had so much body fat that could fuel them, and they had so much lean body mass from carrying around that's 600 pounds, they could afford to lose some of their muscle. I certainly wouldn't recommend that to anyone, but my point is that it should be easy to fast. Human beings were meant to go days without food when it wasn't available. I mean, freezers were only invented 100 years ago. We didn't used to have all of this food available. It was very normal to go without. And shortening your eating window is a great solution, but if you're starving because you can't access your fat, it doesn't do you any good. So lowering your carbohydrates has to be part of any diet, in my opinion, in your late 30s, 40s, and beyond, because we just can't use them all. They're gonna get stored as fat, they're gonna keep your insulin high, and it's gonna prevent you from burning fat. Full stop. So the third part's really important, and this is why. I just basically gave you the simple secret to all of optimal health, having a lean body as you age. Prioritize protein, eat 2 to 3 times a day, shorten your eating window to about 8 hours, maybe 10, and eat fresh vegetables as your most carbohydrate rich source. That's it. So I could just say, okay, off you go. Nice talking to you. But here's the problem. We're humans. It doesn't work that way. We're not robots, right? I wish sometimes we were robots. I wish sometimes I could just go click, go to sleep, click. All you want is lean protein and vegetables. Easy. But it's just not how it works. We have a lot of desire. We have a lot of thoughts, right? It's like we talk ourselves out of anything new. Our mind goes bananas. It's like this ticker tape in the back of our mind all the time. Well, you're going to feel deprived, right? Like, what are the thoughts you guys are thinking right now? I don't think I can do that. Well, how could I possibly give up bread, even for a couple weeks? Or I've never been able to lose weight before. I'm never going to be able to do it. It just doesn't happen fast enough. My hormones are off. I'm too old. I've tried and tried and tried and nothing has ever worked. So why will this, right? All of that shit in our brain is just continually sabotaging us. They are called limiting beliefs. And as long as we pay attention to that stuff, we're just going to have trouble getting anywhere. So one of the parts of my program is helping you notice the thoughts that you're having that are holding you back. And we all have them. There's no getting away from them. Even with all of the coaching that I do on myself, I have multiple coaches of my own, and the thoughts are always going to be there because we're humans. The only thing we can do is recognize them and decide not to let them drive the bus. They don't get to be in charge. We do. One of the first things that I do with my clients is have them define their goal. And this seems really simple, right? Like, what do you mean? I want to be healthier. I want to lose weight. But it really has to be refined. I have a meditation teacher that talks about the cosmic cafe, which I think is absolutely hilarious. And she's like, imagine you're going into the cosmic cafe and you've got the cosmic waitress and she says, hi, you can have anything you want. What would you like? And you say, well, I'm hungry and I'm thirsty. So how about some food and something to drink would be great. And she's like, okay, but I can give you anything you want. Just tell me. I don't know, something kind of savory. Doesn't work like that. You have to know exactly what you want in order to get it. And part of the problem is we don't allow ourselves to want what we really want. I can't tell you how many clients I have where their average weight, say for their height, is like 150 pounds. And they say, well, 170 would be great. Maybe 160 if I'm really pushing it. I find people are very afraid to actually ask for what they want. To ask what they want from their body, from their relationships, their careers, financially. How much money do you really want? What do you want your relationship to really look like? That's the kind of stuff that we talk about with food. And part of what helps is figuring out not just what you want, but who you want to be. This is a really big deal. Getting healthy and losing weight isn't just about looking better or even feeling healthier. Who do you want to be in the world? I want to be someone that takes care of herself. I want to be someone that cares enough about the food that I put in my body and the exercise that I do. I want to be an 80-year-old grandma who's running around with her kids. I want to be an example for my children and the people around me. I want to feel good about myself all the time. Now that doesn't mean I eat great all the time. I eat chocolate and I drink wine and I do all the fun things some of the time. But not enough that my actions stop aligning with my values. That's really what makes us feel like shit. When you know this isn't who you are, the way you eat, the way you exercise, the way you feel in your body, the way you look, when you know that that is not who you are, it feels bad, feels uncomfortable. And I do not have a perfect body or perfect health by any means, but I am 100% happy because my actions align with who I am 95% of the time. And that is what makes me feel good. That is what propels me to do good things with food and exercise and sleep and taking care of myself. So it's really, really huge. The other thing that's really important in managing our mind is that for some reason, when it comes to food, we're really stubborn about creating a plan and following it. And it never fails to kind of crack me up, because if you were to go to a financial planner and just be like, I'm $25,000 in debt, what do? They're going to say, okay, I want you to write down everything you spend money on, and I want you to figure out what you can eliminate. And we're going to track your income and every penny you bring in and every penny that goes out. They wouldn't say, well, just use your intuition and see what you feel like spending your money on. See whether you feel like saving that day. And that's what we do with food. And we want to do with food, right? There's a lot of intuitive eating out there, people promoting that, and that is great. It's ideal. Often kids can do that. But when we have been conditioned, our bodies have been conditioned to run off sugar and not work the way they're meant to, we can't eat intuitively because we are going to crave sugar all the damn time. There is no way to eat intuitively when your body and your physiology isn't aligned. It's just not possible. Well, I take that back. It's possible, but it's going to suck. You're going to feel like you're suffering. You're going to feel like you're deprived. And most of the time, you're going to overeat because you're drawn to. There's too much good food out in the world. We have too much access, and it's too easy. And even if you took a caveman who has no metabolic issues at all, and you showed him all the food that was available, they would eat it all the time too. It's just being human. So I have my clients follow a plan and follow through on it and have their own back, right? It's like not sabotage themselves, not be like, oh, well, you deserve a treat tonight and you've been working really hard and there's just nothing in the house. I mean, I don't have any choice but to order pizza. That's bullshitting yourself. It's not having your own back. Now, if you choose to go have pizza or you choose to eat something that's off your plan, that's very different than sort of rationalizing it in your brain because you're believing everything that your mind is telling you. That is something that we have to coach on a lot. The last part that I want to share with you is that I like to recommend having a celebration mindset versus a struggle mindset. We can turn anything into a struggle, right? I'm so tired of making lunch for my kids and picking up all their clothes. I hate going to work. I don't want to get up in the morning to exercise, right? Struggle, struggle, struggle. Why can't I eat ice cream like everybody else? But instead you can flip that and say, I don't love making my kids lunch, but I do love seeing them thrive and be healthy and be happy and satisfied. Maybe I don't love my job or going to work, but I love providing for my family. I can feel good about that. Maybe I can't have ice cream, but look at all these other amazing things that I can have. I am madly in love with everything that I eat. My kids make fun of me all the time because I love everything. Like I get so excited about salmon and roasted cauliflower and give me a filet mignon and I'm like the happiest person in the world. I don't even notice the things that I don't eat because I'm so excited about the things that I do. I didn't want to get up and exercise yesterday. I was exhausted. But I really wanted to feel the way I feel after I exercise. And so I just did an easier workout and I felt great. Sometimes I don't want to go to bed at night. I want to look at my phone. But I love the way that I feel when I wake up in the morning when I'm rested. This is how we just shift the focus so that you are not looking at the struggle and instead you're celebrating how amazing you are kind of all the time. And this just encourages you to do even more. And eventually it becomes easier and easier and easier. And I just want to also say, and because I don't know if you guys knew I had technical problems, so I'm on my phone. But if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them if I can figure out the best way to do it. And I also want to say that a lot of my clients, not me personally, because I feel best not eating carbohydrate except from vegetable, but some people reintroduce. They feel good with them. I recommend that you save it for your evening meal so that your insulin levels are low all day long, because you can still burn fat all day long by not eating carbohydrate until dinner, and then have a little carbs at dinner, something whole, and then boom, you'll be right back into fat burning mode probably by the middle of the night. So that is a really great sort of win-win for a lot of people that I work with. So I'm going to be coming on live once a week to answer questions, talk to you guys. I have a lot to say all the time. And if anybody has any questions or they're curious about working with me or talking about anything food related, I am always game. It's been a pleasure talking to you today. I'm going to just look on my phone. I don't see any questions. Thanks for joining. I'll talk to you soon.